what we call God is not the God that God's not just sitting around for all of eternity saying, "Hey, I think I'll create the universe. Hey, that's a great idea. Why did I do that?" Well, why are you going to do that, God? Oh, I don't know, to reflect my own glory and to make me look really super supreme being. Really? You're God? That's kind of a stupid old rehashed Greek myth kind of a God. Are you really saying that that's why you created the universe, to make yourself look good? Well, that's the prevailing idea. If you go back to the original theological Christian idea about why did God create us, it's in the Baltimore Catechism. God created us to know him, to love him, and to serve him with all of our love. Okay? That was the first question.
Baltimore Catechism, like
Baltimore.
Sorry, I mispronounced.
Rat infested.
Had to go political, didn't
world, right? Rat infested capital of the world. But I hope I'm answering your question here. So it's easy to understand that God evolves if you accept the idea that we live in a dynamic world of existence, not a static world. There aren't two worlds, one static, where God is and all of these perfected ideas exist, and the other is this material plane where everything changes.
The next question is more of an epistemological question,
right,
than a metaphysical question, and that it really is kind of a rehashing of my original question: is how can we know?
Right.
The premise that you stated, that we're imperfect observers, works both for and against your overall argument.
Right.
Is that, yes, it's possible what you're saying to a certain degree, but it's also possible what you're saying is wrong because we are imperfect observers.
Right. No, I agree, and it does come down to a basic epistemology. And let me clear away some of the debris.
Yeah.
Here's some of the debris that keeps us from epistemological insight.
And by the way, for those who do not know, epistemology means your theory of understanding, or
theory of knowledge. How do we know what we know, and can we know it with certainty? That's the textbook edition of epistemology.
All right, Professor McIntyre, get back to work.
Okay, get back to work. Okay, I'm being paid a lot of money for this, but I want to.
I know. Thank you, sponsor.
So how do we know? How do we know that we're living in a changing world? Just look out the window, right? Just study history. Everything changes. Everything.
At the same time, things like history repeats itself, and a lot of things.
And at the same time, certain things remain the same in the human psyche. Okay, certain things remain the same. So how do we balance out those two? How do we know? For instance, that there's not a creator God, but there's rather just an existential God, a God that actually is existence? And my answer to that is parsimony, the law of parsimony. Parsimony is a difficult word to understand, but it's really quite simple. Parsimony means the easiest explanation is probably the best explanation. If I need to invent 15,000 entities,
how do you define best explanation?
Best,
do you mean simplest,
in terms of epistemology, your very question. Your best in terms of how can I know that X is the case? Let me give you an example. If a person gets murdered in my complex, if I have to invent that all kinds of crazy theories that it was a little green man from the planet Pluto that actually committed the murder, okay, that is non-parsimonious. Okay, who do I look at first? Police know this. You look at the family. What's his wife has to do about it? What's that blood on her frying pan all about, right? What's that knife stuck in the guy's? Whose fingerprints are on the knife? So if I have to invent weird, outlandish, crazy, extraordinary explanations in order to explain a simple thing, that's non-parsimonious. Parsimony means the simplest explanation is probably a better explanation. The wife did it.
Probably.
Most probably.
Yeah, because at the at least if we're going to engage in your analogy, it does not rule out that a little green man from Mars.
It doesn't. No. So it doesn't. No.
It sounds like
you're asking me an epistemic question. How do I know X is the case? Just imagine you're on a jury in a courtroom, and what's the rule of the jury? The judge will say to the jury before he sends them into sequestration, he'll say to them, you must decide beyond a reasonable doubt. So, and epistemology is settled on that basis alone, beyond a reasonable doubt.
So, to all the people watching, all the crazy whack jobs that are watching, who say that their belief, which is different than the great Professor McIntyre's,
Right.
on I'm starting to go all William F. Buckley on you if you don't mind. For all the people in the audience that
Yes.
disagree with Professor McIntyre
Yes.
on the law of parsimony, they believe that you actually are violating the law of parsimony.
Right.
What is your response to them that they believe
Well,
they
in
are
order to support the traditional metaphysics that there's a non-material world and a non-material God and a non-material heaven and a non-material hell, I have to make such outrageous assumptions which are totally beyond any probability whatsoever.
Well,
This is not
what do you base that probability on?
There's no evidence. I can't see it. I can't taste it. I can't smell it. I can't touch it. It's not in my experience.
The same thing with you can't smell, taste, or touch morality or
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can
morality.
You can see you can see the moral arc. You can see the moral compass in history. You can see it in history. You can see that tyrants eventually get overthrown. You can see that freedom actually works. You can see
those are metaphysical judgments you're making. They're not something that you can test in a lab.
They're metaphysical inferences that I'm making, but there are realities that actually can be observed and metricized. They can be measured. They can be measured.
I mean, by the very nature of this, of God, you can't. It's not something that can be. I mean, of course, you believe that God is existence. Then whatever you're smelling is God.
Well, I mean, it's, going back to my very first point, we have made such an anthropomorphic God about, especially the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims. I mean, all of those folks. They have patterned God. They have created God basically as a superhuman entity, and I think that has been the basic mistake of religion. I really believe that the basic mistake is crafting. It's just the same mistake that the ancient Greeks made of creating their mythological gods of Zeus and Poseidon and Athena and Mars and Jupiter and all those gods. If God exists at all in the sense that we conceive it, cannot be designed after a human being.
Of course, I completely agree with you. So I would like to point out, by the very nature of how you framed that point, is that you specifically denoted that the God of the Bible was invented.
Yeah.
Do I mean, just by the way you
No, I posit
demonstrated.
that. I posit that. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. So you're more inclined to the more Eastern understanding, not necessarily Hindu but the Buddhist.
No, a process philosophy rather than the philosophy that underpins my theology is a process philosophy. It is not a static philosophy. It's not a static metaphysics. Yeah.
I see. There you go. Well, folks, that's I don't want to take up too much time before your poor little brains explode. But according to Professor McIntyre, do not worry.
Think about it. Ask your question. Why do you believe what you believe? That's all I ask you.
And make sure to comment below, guys. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And please become a Patreon supporter. We'd love to keep doing what we're doing and making fun and messing around and throwing grenades. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe. And we love you very much, very dearly.
Alex, thank you for asking all the good questions. Okay.
Professor McIntyre loves you like you're a god, basically.
Mwah.
Take care.